I stayed with him, even when he was broke. For 2 years, I watched as he struggled, his wallet always empty, his promises endless. But the only gift he ever gave me was a $2 hair tie. I accepted it, not out of excitement, but because I believed in him. I believed in us. But then everything shattered in an instant. One day, I saw him giving a Ferrari to some Instagram influencer. Casually, like it was nothing. It hit me then, he wasn't just some penniless guy. He was playing me all along. One night, I found myself standing frozen outside a VIP room, my tray trembling in my hands. Inside, through the glass, was him. I couldn't believe it. He was wearing a tailored suit, radiating an aura of wealth I had never seen. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. He had his arm around a stunning influencer, her beauty practically glowing. Her millions of followers had nothing on her charm, and in that moment, my heart stopped. I remember the night before, him holding me close, whispering softly, "Babe, I'm so lucky to have you. I love you so much." His words echoed in my mind, but they felt like a distant memory now. The influencer dangled a car key in front of him, smiling sweetly, saying, "Thank you so much, Joel. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." The room erupted in cheers, the sounds of adoration filling the air. "Marry him!" someone shouted. "Kiss! Kiss!" they yelled, their voices rising like a wave. And they kissed. I stood there, numb. It felt like lightning had struck me, the shock ripping through my body. I handed my tray to a coworker and fled to the bathroom. I couldn't breathe, my chest tightening with each sob. How had I been so blind? 2 years, and all he had ever given me was that cheap scrunchie. He always told me his family was poor, that his mom was gone, his dad had suffered a stroke, and his younger siblings needed support. I understood. I empathized. I took care of him. We lived in a tiny apartment, barely scraping by. I paid the rent, the utilities, and the groceries. His paycheck, he claimed, went straight to his family. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But then I began to see cracks. He'd get insecure, asking, "Babe, do you think I'm a loser for being broke?" I reassured him every time. "It's okay. We'll work hard. Things will get better." He'd promise me, "I'll make enough money to marry you, buy you a huge diamond ring, a big house. You won't have to work anymore." Those promises had been the glue holding me together. But now, as I sat in that bathroom, everything he'd said felt like a lie. I left the bar early that night, telling the manager I was sick. When I got home, I cried myself to sleep, the weight of everything too much to bear. He came in after midnight, crawling into bed next to me, his words soft. "Sorry, babe, the boss made us work late." He knew I had a second job, but he didn't say where. And when I caught the faint scent of perfume on him, my heart twisted. When I didn't respond, he kissed my cheek, asking, "Babe, what's wrong? Are you mad?" I choked back the tears, afraid he'd hear. "No, just not feeling well," I whispered, my voice trembling. He touched my forehead. "No fever. Go to sleep, babe. You'll feel better tomorrow." I clenched my jaw, my tears streaming down my face in silence. The next day, I left early for work, my eyes puffy and red. His message popped up on my phone. "Babe, why didn't you call in sick?" I stared at it, feeling my vision blur. "I'm fine now," I replied, my hands shaking. "Eat breakfast, babe. Love you." I bit my lip, the words tasting bitter. XA. If you loved me, you wouldn't be kissing other women. A Ferrari? I couldn't even imagine owning something like that. That night, I returned to the bar, knowing he'd show up late, pretending he was working. He did, but this time, he wasn't ordering takeout. No. He was ordering bottles of champagne worth thousands, while at home, we agonized over whether to splurge on meat for dinner. I delivered his drinks, but he didn't see me. He was sitting there in the center with the influencer by his side. My coworkers whispered about the wealthy men in that room, all deferring to him like he was royalty. I stood there, in my uniform, heavy makeup, my mask on, hidden in the dim light. I was invisible. He didn't even recognize me. Then I overheard their conversation. He was the heir to the Carvalho Corporation, worth billions. No dead mom, no sick dad, no struggling siblings. It was all a lie. I felt the ground slip beneath me. Then someone asked, "Joel, are you still with that broke girl, Mariana?" Another voice chimed in, "You've been stringing her along for 2 years. Don't tell me you actually fell for her." Joel scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Fall for her? That cheap, tacky girl? She's not even fit to be my maid." My heart cracked open, the pain flooding through me. I looked down at my hands, rough and calloused from work. My most expensive possession? My second-hand phone. And then I looked at the influencer. Her skin was flawless, her clothes designer. We were worlds apart. I wasn't even good enough to be his maid. "Then why not dump her?" someone asked. Joel smirked. "When I'm done playing with her," he said coldly. "She's such a clueless idiot. I casually mentioned a Patek Philippe watch, and now she's saving up to buy me one. She eats ramen every day, wears cheap clothes, and gets excited over a $2 scrunchie." His words cut like knives. She's like a dirty, used rag, good for wiping your shoes. The influencer giggled, tossing her hair back. Don't insult yourself by even comparing yourself to that kind of trash. Of course, darling, Joel said, his voice filled with contempt. She's not fit to lick your boots. The room roared with laughter. I felt my heart shatter. Joel laughed too, and the contempt in his eyes made me want to disappear. I clutched my chest, barely able to breathe, my limbs trembling. A dirty, used rag. I looked at the scrunchie on my wrist, biting my lip. I had pretended to love it because I didn't want to hurt his pride. What girl wouldn't want a real gift from her boyfriend? But he twisted my sincerity into a joke. I stumbled, accidentally stepping on the influencer's foot. She slapped me. You clumsy idiot, watch where you're going, she screamed, her voice filled with venom. I apologized, bowing my head, but she pushed me, shoving me hard. Get on your knees and apologize. Several guys shoved me too, their taunts ringing in my ears. How dare you disrespect our queen? I fought back tears. I'm sorry, I whispered. In the chaos, I heard Joel's voice, indifferent and cold. Enough, Victoria. Don't waste your time on a waitress. It's beneath you. He glanced at me with disgust. Get out. His words crushed me. My body shook, and I scrambled to my feet, running out of the bar. Tears burst forth, the weight of his betrayal suffocating me. All his love had been a lie. I remembered when I first met him. I was leaving work late one night when some men tried to drag me into an alley. He had intervened, fighting them off, getting bruised and battered in the process. He took the blows for me, and I was touched, my heart warmed by his protection. But that warmth, it turned out, was just another lie. Joel felt like salvation. When I took him to dinner, he opened up confessing his feelings, and we started dating. It seemed like a dream. He was handsome, devoted, and a hard worker. I thought I had found love. But what did I get in return? 2 years of sacrifice. I woke up early, making him breakfast. I nursed him through fevers, terrified that if he needed me and I wasn't there, I'd lose him. And what did he do? Nothing but sweet talk and empty promises. He was right about one thing. I was stupid. Stupid for being so thoroughly deceived. I stumbled home, numb. There he was, sitting on the couch, wearing the faded matching t-shirt I had bought him. He stood up when he saw me, smiling. Babe, my coworkers took me out for barbecue. I brought some home for you, he said, pointing to the takeout and a six-pack of beer. He looked thrilled, like he'd won the lottery, but all I could do was stare at him, remembering the time he casually ordered champagne worth thousands without blinking an eye. My bonus this month? A measly $200. Awesome, right? When I didn't respond, he tried to hug me, his arms reaching out. Babe, what's wrong? His words barely registered in my mind. The memory of his kiss with the influencer made my stomach churn. I doubled over, dry heaving, my body betraying me. I hadn't eaten all day. He knelt beside me, worried. Babe, are you sick? Let's go to the hospital. His concern felt like a cruel joke. If I hadn't seen the truth, I would have fallen for it. I shoved the barbecue and beer into the trash. He frantically retrieved them. What are you doing? This was expensive, he said, his voice rising. I closed my eyes, wondering how long he would keep up this act. I opened Amazon on my phone and showed him a bottle of toner I'd been eyeing but couldn't afford. I want this. Can you buy it for me? He looked at the price, then slapped his forehead. I'm sorry, babe. I'm so useless. I can't even buy you what you want. So sincere, so remorseful. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, maybe I would have believed it. But a $25 bottle of toner? Too expensive for him. But a Ferrari? It was nothing. To him, I was a cheap woman, unworthy of even basic skincare. Meanwhile, I treated him like a king. I laughed, tears streaming down my face. He thought I was crying because he couldn't buy me the toner. Babe, don't be sad. I'll save up, okay? Don't cry, he promised. When I make more money, I'll buy you anything you want, even if it costs $100. His voice softened. Your tears break my heart. His tender words should have soothed me, but instead they brought back everything. The sting of his insults, his disdain, the way he looked at me like I was trash when the influencer demanded I kneel. He was a monster. I pushed him away, my eyes blazing. We're breaking up. Panic filled his eyes. Don't be mad. I'll save up next month. Okay, babe? His desperation was palpable. I wanted to rip the mask off his face. I wiped my tears, my throat raw. Joel Carvalho, I'm just a dirty used rag, right? Why bother lying anymore? I didn't expect him to respond. In fact, I was prepared for him to deny everything, to twist the truth like he always did. But when he stood there, silent, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, I realized something. He knew he was cornered. I had finally seen his true face. His silence was the last straw. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was bitter, sharp, full of pain and disdain. You're not even going to try to explain? I asked, my voice trembling, not with sadness, but with anger. You're not even going to pretend this is all a misunderstanding? That you love me and everything I heard was just one big mistake? He took a step back, raising his hands like he was trying to defend himself. Babe, it's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like, he stammered. I interrupted him, my voice rising. I saw it with my own eyes, Joel. I heard you say I'm a dirty, used rag. I heard you laugh at me, at everything I sacrificed for you. And now you have the audacity to stand there and act like you can fix this with another lie? He tried to step closer, but I raised my hand, pointing at him like a stop sign. Not another step, I shouted. I want you out of my house, now. Babe, please, he begged, his voice cracking. I can explain. I was drunk. I didn't know what I was saying. Oh, of course, you were drunk, I mocked, crossing my arms. Because being drunk is the perfect excuse for humiliating the person you supposedly love, right? My voice trembled with fury. It wasn't just what you said, Joel. It was the way you said it. The way you looked at me like I was nothing, less than nothing. He dropped to his knees, grabbing my hands. Please, babe. I made a mistake. I was an idiot, but I love you. I've always loved you. You've always loved me? I spat the words like poison. Is that why you gave a Ferrari to that influencer? Why you lied about your family? About your life? Everything you told me was a manipulation. You made me feel sorry for you, made me sacrifice everything while you lived a double life as some spoiled billionaire? You think that's love? I shoved him away, pulling my hands free from his grip. He fell back, sitting on the floor, his eyes locked on mine. Not with regret, but with something else. Something he couldn't hide. Arrogance. The certainty that somehow he could still control me. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice suddenly cold, missing the pleading tone from before. This house, everything you have, it's mine, because you wouldn't be anything without me. I laughed again, louder this time, harder. Nothing without you? I asked, my voice sharp. Have you forgotten who paid the rent for 2 years? Who worked 2 jobs to keep this house running while you sat around spending money on other women? I'm the only reason you had a roof over your head while you pretended to be broke. He tried to stand, but I was faster. You know what's funny? I continued, my voice biting. While you were laughing at me with your friends, I was here thinking about how I could save more to help you. I gave up basic necessities to make sure you had everything. Everything he'd made me feel, every insult, every degradation, it all hit me like a slap. For the first time, I looked at him, truly looked, and realized, I'm not the dirty rag you are. His face froze, his eyes widening. For once, he had nothing to say. He just stared at me. But in that moment, something flashed in his eyes. Fear. He knew I was serious. You have until tomorrow morning to leave, I said, my voice firm, steady. And don't think for a second that I'll let you manipulate me again, because from now on, I'm taking care of myself. I'm living my life without carrying the weight of your pathetic existence. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't let him. I opened the door wide, my finger pointing sharply outside. Get out. Now. He hesitated, lingering, as if hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. I simply closed the door in his face, cutting off the last thread of our connection. That night, I sat on the couch, a bottle of wine in my hand. It had been meant for a special occasion, something to mark a victory. But now, it was for this. The end of that toxic relationship. That was worth celebrating. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt something I thought I'd forgotten. Peace. Looking back, I realized how blind I had been. I had ignored all the signs, convincing myself to believe the best in someone who only saw me as a tool to manipulate. But not anymore. Never again would I let anyone treat me like that, because in the end, I deserved so much more than he could ever offer. And now, finally, I was free. I was determined to leave everything behind. I didn't want to think about him, about his lies or the humiliations I'd suffered, the years I'd wasted. But as the days passed, an overwhelming sense of injustice gnawed at me. He had used me, manipulated me, tossed me aside like garbage while he continued to live his luxurious life without a care in the world. No consequences. I needed to let it out. One sleepless night, I grabbed my phone and began typing. I didn't use names, just told the story. How he pretended to be poor, how I supported him for 2 years, how I discovered his true identity at the bar, where he had publicly humiliated me while flaunting his wealth with an influencer. It was a long post, but each word felt like lifting a weight off my chest. I didn't expect anything. I just needed to vent. The next day, everything changed. My post had gone viral. Thousands of people were commenting, sharing, outraged by what they had read. Some curious users pieced together the clues, investigated, and uncovered his identity. It didn't take long for his name to be tied to the story. And then, everything began to crumble. His reputation shattered. People shared photos of him at lavish parties, extravagant trips, gifts for other women. Comments flooded social media. Liar, manipulator, exploiter. The influencer he had been dating got dragged into the mess, and the internet went wild. Some people began tagging his family's company, questioning how someone so devoid of character could represent such a prominent corporation. As all this unfolded, messages started pouring in. Some were supportive, others offered advice, but one stood out. A lawyer reached out. He told me that based on what I had described, we had grounds to sue. You lived with him for 2 years, he said. That qualifies as a common law relationship in many places. And considering he hid his true financial status while you supported him, you can claim half of the assets acquired during that time. I was stunned. I had never thought of that. As much as I wanted justice, the thought of going through a legal battle with someone as wealthy and powerful as him terrified me. He had resources. He could easily intimidate me. But on the other hand, I deserved some compensation for the years I'd sacrificed for him. I spoke with the lawyer, who reassured me. You've got a solid case. There's enough evidence, rent receipts, messages where he made financial promises and never kept them. And now, with the story going viral, there's no shortage of witnesses. I decided to go for it. The next months were a whirlwind. Of course, he tried to intimidate me. His lawyers sent threatening letters, claiming I was defaming him and demanding I drop the case. But with the support of my lawyer and the encouragement of countless people who rallied behind me online, I stood my ground. During the hearings, it became clear he had no solid defense. The evidence was irrefutable. I had paid the rent, the bills, while he spent his money on parties and expensive gifts for others. The highlight came when the judge recognized our common law relationship and ruled that I was entitled to half of the assets he had acquired during the time we lived together. It wasn't his entire fortune, but it was enough to change my life. Joel was furious, but there was nothing he could do. When the lawsuit was finally over, it felt like I had closed an old chapter of my life. With the money I received, I started investing in myself. I opened my own business, something I'd always dreamed of, and began building a new life. Most importantly, I learned to prioritize my happiness. As for Joel, he lost far more than just money. His reputation was in ruins. His family's company began distancing themselves from him to protect their image. The influencer he was dating publicly dumped him, stating that she didn't want to associate her personal brand with a toxic man. He tried to rebuild, but people don't forget easily. In the end, it wasn't about the money. It was about justice. It was about proving that no one has the right to treat another person the way he treated me. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free.